Welcome to Whispering Cabins, where the woods are quiet, the stories are eerie, and the night whispers just for you. Settle in and listen closely. Tonight, we tell the story of the train through the mist. The first sign that autumn had arrived in Bramble Hollow wasn't the turning of the leaves or the smell of wood smoke in the air. It was the sound of the train. No one in town could say where the tracks led. They curved out of the hills to the east, dipped through the fog-covered marshland, and disappeared again beyond the cedar woods. The line didn't appear on any maps, and the railway station had long since been boarded up. But every year, on the first foggy night of October, a low whistle drifted through the mist like a sigh. That was when the train came. Margaret Brant heard it first that year while she was sitting by the window of her small cottage, knitting a scarf for her niece. The evening had folded in early, bringing with it a creeping fog that clung to the hedgerows and curled around the lampposts. She paused, knitting needles suspended mid-air, and listened. There it was again, a soft, mournful whistle, followed by the rhythmic chuffing of an engine. She smiled faintly. Right on time, she murmured to herself. Most folks in Bramble Hollow ignored the train. A few pretended it didn't exist. But for Margaret, it was tradition. Ever since she was a girl, she'd gone down to the old crossing to watch it glide by. There was comfort in its predictability, in the way it arrived like clockwork, steady, gentle, and shrouded in mist. She wrapped her shawl tight and stepped into the night. By the time she reached the crossing, the fog was so thick she could hardly see her own feet. But she could hear it, metal against metal, the faint squeal of brakes, the hiss of steam. Then, as though summoned by her presence, two soft lights pierced the fog. The train rolled to a stop before her. It was beautiful in an old-fashioned sort of way. Black iron and brass fittings, its name written in looping gold script across the engine's side. The Evermore line. Margaret chuckled. "You again?" she said softly. The door to one of the carriages swung open with a hiss. Warm light spilled out, along with the scent of tea and baked bread. A figure stood in the doorway, tall and dressed in a long grey coat. His features were softened, as though made of mist themselves. Kind eyes, a gentle smile, edges that shimmered faintly against the lamplight. "Good evening," he said, tipping his hat. "Would you care to join us for tea?" Margaret hesitated. This part was new. The townsfolk always said the same thing about the passengers on the Evermore line, that they were polite, friendly, and, if you looked too long, their shadows didn't quite match their bodies. No one she knew had ever accepted the invitation to board. "Just for a moment," said the man, as if sensing her hesitation. His voice was calm, musical. "You've been watching us for many years. It's only proper we return the kindness." Margaret smiled despite herself. She was 73 after all. What was the harm in a cup of tea? "Just for a moment," she agreed, and stepped aboard. Inside, the carriage glowed with soft golden light. Plush seats lined the walls, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. A small table sat at the center, set for tea. China cups, sugar cubes, and steaming pots. Other passengers sat nearby, their forms gentle and indistinct, as though made of fog and moonlight. Yet there was something warm about them. They chatted softly, their laughter muted but pleasant, like the memory of laughter, rather than the sound itself. "Welcome," said the man in the grey coat. "My name is Mr. Larkspur." He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Please, sit." Margaret did, smoothing her shawl. "And where does this train go, Mr. Larkspur?" He smiled. "Wherever one needs to go." That sounds rather mysterious. He poured her a cup of tea. Only to those who haven't yet traveled. Margaret took a sip. The tea was warm and fragrant, tasting faintly of honey and something she couldn't place, something nostalgic, like the scent of her mother's garden when she was small. For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the rhythmic hum of the train filling the space between words. Mr. Larkspur broke it first. "You've watched us for many years. Why tonight?" "I suppose," she began, then paused. "I suppose I was curious. I've lived here all my life, and I've never seen where these tracks lead." He nodded. "And do you wish to?" Margaret hesitated. The mist outside pressed against the windows, thick and silver, moving like waves. "I think I do." Mr. Larkspur smiled again, soft and understanding. "Then perhaps you already have." She blinked. "Pardon?" He gestured toward the window. The fog was parting. Beyond it stretched a landscape she didn't recognize, a valley glowing faintly under a pale moon, dotted with lanterns that seemed to float above the ground. The air shimmered, almost humming, and there, walking along the tracks, were people. Her breath caught. She knew them. There was her husband, Thomas, smiling that same crooked smile he'd worn the day they'd met. There was her mother standing beside him, knitting needles in hand. And further back, her father, her old school teacher, friends she'd thought long gone. Each of them turned and waved as the train passed. Margaret felt tears rise unbidden. They're gone." Mr. Larkspur inclined his head. "Not gone. Simply further along the line." The train began to slow again. The mist gathered once more around the windows. Mr. Larkspur stood, offering his hand. "You may disembark if you wish, or continue. The choice is always yours." Margaret took a deep breath. The tea still warmed her hands. She looked out the window one last time, at the ghostly glow of the lanterns and the familiar faces waiting just beyond the mist. Then she smiled. "I think I'll stay a little longer." Mr. Larkspur's eyes softened. A wise choice. When the townsfolk found her the next morning, she was sitting peacefully on the bench by the old crossing, shawl around her shoulders, a faint smile on her face. The air smelled faintly of tea and lavender. The train was gone. But that night, when the fog rolled in again, a few people swore they heard the whistle, and, if they listened closely, the sound of laughter drifting through the mist. And for the first time, when the train passed through Bramble Hollow, one of the windows glowed a little brighter. Inside, a woman with silver hair poured tea for her new friends and looked out at the world she'd left behind. Thank you for spending some time here at Whispering Cabins, where the light is low and the stories linger. If you enjoyed tonight's tale, don't forget to subscribe or share with someone who loves a gentle chill before bed. Until next time, sleep well, if the night lets you.